If you're publishing your content online, chances are very likely you've run into some issues, including the lack of book sales. Naturally, being an author, you'd like to be rewarded for the work and time that you've put into all of your projects. So, what's the deal? What's the silver bullet? What is the magical component? Well, I can assure you that my guest today isn't going to give you a silver bullet or a magic formula, but he's going to shed some more light on some stuff that makes you understand marketing your books a little bit more in depth. His name is Jonny Andrews. He's actually a multi-time guest of the Self-Publishing with Dale podcast as well as on the main channel. So I wanted to sit down with him and just have a deep conversation on why is it that we can write great content, have a great cover design, have everything dialed in, yet not get so many sales, not get as many sales as we'd like. So without any further ado, let's get into the interview. So just yesterday, you and I sat down, we got to talk to our season 2 guest, Sarah Walday. It was a fun and interesting experience. You and I find her to be obviously a breath of fresh air, but she's running into the same issue that a lot of other authors run into, where they grind and grind and grind, and they're seeing moderate success, but not the success that they're anticipating. So what are your initial thoughts with that consultation yesterday?
Oh, absolutely. So, on a super positive note, just like you said, breath of fresh air. I mean, she understands a lot deeper than I would say 95% of pretty much who we both talk to all the time.
Yeah.
In that regard, that there needs to be a level of tracking. There needs to be like, okay, ask the question to yourself, what the heck is working?
Yeah.
And you can have that be this zygote level. Like, I put one link here and I write it down so I know where that comes from, and I can see people that click the link. And I know that, when I did this thing, I got 300 people to click this link.
Yeah.
Great. That means I should probably, and then, anecdotally, of course, because you can't see past that, all of a sudden then book sales went up. And it's like, okay, cool. There should be some level of that. And it's really, and I do acknowledge that is kind of tedious and it is a pain in the butt, because of obviously the way all of these publishing platforms, Amazon and Apple and all that stuff, the way they operate, they're like a black box of data. You can't really get in there.
Yeah.
But I think what happened was, and this is why it's probably good that we talk about this, is her situation is indicative of, I would say, the vast majority of authors.
Okay.
In fact, what I'm going to do is kind of take this out of the author space for a second, because it is so completely universal everywhere. This is something I had alluded to earlier, which is called a feast-famine cycle. And say, for example, in businesses where you have a sales component, like, which is authoring, definitely, absolutely, because there is a sales component of that kind of stuff. But what I want to do is kind of put this into real estate. So for all you listening, just give me a second, because you're going to understand this, and it's probably going to punch you in the gut when it hits home, like, oh, God, that's so me. All right, so let's put this into a thing. It's like, I used to do mortgages back in the day. All right, so I cut my teeth in the world of selling. It started with Kirby vacuum cleaners. We can definitely tell that story later. But then I was like, wow, I hate this. This was awful. I'm going to drive all over Christendom, stopping at random people's houses to go demo a vacuum cleaner in their living room. Not okay. Okay, that's awful, especially with today's gas prices. I mean, come on now. So I like segued out of that, and I was like, because there's no qualification. That was the problem. So I then went into mortgages randomly. There was an ad, and I was like, yeah, sure, why not? It's better than vacuums. And what I learned was, when you get into a new job or a business or something like that, where it's like, okay, I'm going to sell this thing, there is this phase one of like, I'm a greenhorn, I'm brand new. Yep. And what I'm going to do is jump in there, and I'm going to go pick up the lead list, or I'm going to, open the phone book, which I think is totally illegal at this point, but 25 years ago, not so much. I'm just going to spam everybody.
Yeah.
But there's probably some sort of way for you to get a lead list where you can then, smile and dial or email or do whatever it is to first contact a fresh group of leads. And a lead, just like in publishing, is going to be somebody who is interested in that thing. In publishing, it'll be someone who's interested in that genre, right? They don't know who you are, but they're like, yeah, I've done something on the interwebs where I've indicated to the machines that I'm interested in this thing, and they went, and they burbled you off to me.
Yeah.
So there's that phase one of like, let's smile and dial, let's cold call, let's hustle, let's build what is called the pipeline.
Yeah.
All right. And so that is a line of humans that have, you've gone through, say, 200, and this is, in a cold call situation, and it truly can be like this, where you maybe have a 10% conversion ratio,
Okay.
meaning of 200 people, you got 20 into your pipeline, meaning you're working on selling them a house or refinancing their house or something like that. All right.
Okay.
So that's stage two, is now you're working the leads, you're working the pipeline. And that can take, 30 to 60 days or whatever it is. And then you move into stage three, which is now
Okay.
you're closing all of them. Now, here's where this gets very familiar, I think, for a lot of people, is in stage four. Remember, it's called feast and famine. So
Yeah.
you just went from famine, you creeped up here, and then maybe within 30 to, I don't know, 90 days, 4 months, whatever it is, you closed a bunch of stuff. And all of a sudden, you go into stage four, which is, oh my God, because there's nothing there for you to work on, right?
Okay.
And why is that? Because most people, they focus, they get what they want from stage one, they stop stage one, they go into stage two, they stop stage two, they go into stage three, they stop stage three. So what's happened? All of the action that got you to the stage three of like, I'm rich, people, like all that kind of stuff is gone. It hasn't been around for 3 months. And so what this does is it creates this feast and famine cycle where, stage four hits and you're like, oh my God, and you run back over to stage one. And a lot of people even fall over on this one because they're like, I don't understand why it's broken. It's broken because the actions that were required, you didn't recognize those for what they were.
Hmm.
Right. And so let's translate this now directly into authors and kind of like, for example, what Sarah's doing. In most cases, there is a stage two and a stage three for authors. Okay. There's the stage one of like creating the book, working with editors, doing the cover, getting this, delightfully incredible product like hammered out. Right. And that's absolutely necessary,
Yeah.
100%. And then they move into stage three, which is I'm now going to go hustle and sell this thing. And that can work. There's definitely some needle moving activity that can take place, with paid ads and all that kind of stuff. But the where authors actually are worse than, say, mortgage brokers is very infrequently is there the stage one, which is
Yeah.
the let's hustle up some people. Let's go get those leads. Let's go do that. And that's really
Okay.
what I was talking about a lot with Sarah was, okay, cool. You've gone and you've made your book, you've launched your book, you've made your book, and you've launched your book. And the question in your mind is, why isn't this doing more?
Hmm.
Well, it's why is the launch not covering the cost of making the product?
Yeah.
It's because stage one is completely absent, which is the building of the audience, which is the
Okay.
growing of the email list, which is the nurturing of the email list. So think about this. She had all of those pieces in place
Yeah.
to nurture an email list, to weed the wheat from the chaff, to get the people like, I just wanted your freebie or whatever it was. I'm not really interested in you. Great. Bye. Kind of thing. Like, let them go. Totally cool. I like to say that every single time we talk because people just go, all right. So now we got to get back to that stage one. And that stage one is always on. And
Yeah.
this is one of those things where it isn't sexy. It's not fun. It can be, but the best part is it can be automated, right?
Okay.
And there's so much stuff that you can do in stage one. And I mean, I think the thing that I've probably beaten to death on this is, do have like a what I call perpetual giveaway. That's what, Author Platform Rocket does and stuff like that. It's these giveaways that reset. They're always on. It just delivers these email subscribers that you can then put into your system that will then, you say, hey, follow me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, come check me out on Twitch or wherever it is that you live.
Yeah.
And so so what you're doing is you're constantly building stage one, constantly. And then as you're doing these other things, like stage two, where you're building your book and editing and creating the thing, and you go into stage three, which is going to be launching that book, you stop having the feast and famine cycle. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden what happens is the more people you put in that front end, the more you get, your systems get rid of the ones that shouldn't be there. And you just boil this raw human material down to the people who are going to really like you and are going to care about you. And then you go through that launch system. What
Hmm.
you start to see is all of a sudden your books aren't just paying for themselves, they're starting to make a lot of money. And what you start to see is the larger that audience of yours grows, the further your reach goes. And the further your reach goes, the more people come unto you. And so part of what we were talking about at the very beginning is that, I think there's a lot of successful authors out there. Obviously, it's a smaller percentage from the whole.
Yeah.
But a lot of the successful authors are successful because they caught like an algorithmic win a lot of times. And this is not a commentary toward the quality of their work at all.
Right.
Because I think you and I know quality of their work doesn't really matter to the extent that I think a lot of people think it does. It's really about like, how do you get in front of those eyeballs? And it's all marketing. It's the right message to the right people at the right time. And sometimes an Amazon algorithm or a social media algorithm or any kind of algorithm, they can be the right person at the right time, and that algorithm holds them aloft for just long enough to catch that wind. And this happened a lot when self-publishing first came out.
Yeah.
I talked to a bunch of authors. I'm like, do you know why you're selling books right now? And they're like, I'm just popular. I'm like, and that's the end of a career. It's like, because, and the way that I look at things is that, remember, expect more fingers than thumbs. We've covered this in a lot of other things.
Yeah.
And so expecting more thumbs than fingers is like thinking that the world is going to, that success just happens. It's the whole, if you build it, they will come crap.
Yeah.
No. It's not if you build it, they will come. It's if you painstakingly put one foot in front of another and continue to plod onward and adapt based on what the market is telling you, you can then get to the point that you're looking for. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So oftentimes I will see this with a lot of authors, and I think this kind of confirms what I've said about some people. They're completely talented. They're fantastic. They got great covers. They got great book descriptions. Their keywords are all dialed in. But when I see all that, I say, well, you don't have a sales problem. You got a traffic problem, because you're converting the very small amount of traffic that's coming over here. You got to send even more. Am I wrong in saying that?
No, you're 100% right. What you're confirming here is that there's a lot of authors that are great at what they do and have really educated themselves to like apex predator level. And I got to say, in the author space, I think this exists more than almost any other business.
Okay.
Is like grow this really phenomenal system, like build this thing that's going to convert readers into buyers.
Yeah.
And you're 100% right, is because then where it breaks down is that stage one that we just talked about. And that is, oh, well, if I was supposed to do all this stuff, I was supposed to get money. It's like, no, you're missing step one. You got to hustle up the traffic, or you have to have your machines hustle up the traffic, or you need to get friends who have enough traffic, like even little pittances of traffic,
Mm-hmm.
You get authors that have like a combined reach of 500 people. If you get 30 of them, great. Actually, let's do the math on that, because that's really what it comes down to, isn't it?
It's a numbers
Let's
game.
say you have 30 friends. Yeah. That's 15,000 right there, right?
Yeah.
If you have 30 people with a reach of 500, that's 15,000 people that you can technically reach. Now, I'm not saying they're all going to buy or they're all going to click, but I'm like, 15,000 is better than 500.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily need to cost you anything, because everybody can kind of like, that's the syndicate method of like, everybody can kind of chip in and do that. And then just imagine if one author has 15,000 on their own. Now you're at 30,000, But it's like, there has to be that understanding of the always on prospecting. That's what it is. It's the prospecting piece at the very beginning of the funnel has been completely missed by the vast majority of authors. And that's kind of why I chose to focus on what I do as like the thing, because it's like, that's the piece that's missing across the entirety of the universe.
Yeah.
For the majority of people who are really struggling. So yeah, I'm, long-winded answer, but yeah, you nailed it with that. You need more traffic.
With a lot of the information you kind of shared, there's probably going to be some people wondering like, okay, Jonny, could you just give me a simple solution, or three if you can, that I could start driving traffic, but in the same instance, I'm broke as hell?
Yeah, that's going to be what I was just talking about, where you go make friends in your space. Because you have three things. Most people say there's time and there's money. I'm like, well, there's time, money, and then there's friends.
Yeah.
And maybe you need to buy your friends. I'm not sure what you're into. You've got weird proclivities. But that's what it is like if you're just totally broke, go find some other authors. Like make sure that you're doing everything that you can so that your product isn't crap.
Yeah.
Because if you enter into these kinds of relationships, then you're doing everyone a disservice.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing I kind of like about a lot of the author community is that there's an above average ethical standard there. You don't typically run into, I mean, every now and then you do, and usually the industry rises as one to slay them. But you typically don't find somebody who's like super black hat about everything they do. They're usually like, is it okay if I say my name in the forum? You know, like they're that over the top with wondering if it's cool to do a thing.
Yeah.
Good. Continue being like that, please. I at least I appreciate it. So I'll watch you all from afar and be like, yeah. But my point with this is go find people and build that syndicate. And in fact,
Yeah.
if you want to be able to do something really interesting, it would probably behoove you to build a syndicate within the genre that you're doing and kind of maybe create a place where everybody can talk together. Because that's what I do is I do business development, like where I grow businesses and then feed them humans and, listen to the screams of the dying as they turn into money. As they go through that digestive process through the system. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
But that's one way of looking at it. Like, if, for example, I was talking to a number of authors who had reached out, interestingly, through a lot of your shows, and they're all kind of everybody's in the same boat, really, because it's like, well, what can you do? I'm like, well, you're probably not going to make a ton of money. If you're completely broke, you're going to need to crawl with your lips and fingernails up the wall of success. And it's going to take a longer time than if you can just walk in and have some money to spend on this and be frugal and prudent with it so that you can test. Because again, money doesn't just buy your way in. You need to have the right thing at the right time. If you do have the right thing at the right time that people want to read, money will most certainly accelerate your penetration, if you will, into the market.
Yeah.
But if you're totally broke, then you get to eke your way up that food chain, and your literal only goal outside of, so I think I told Robert this too. Yes, be building your books. Yes, be writing your books. We do a minimum 4 a year. You have to have that production mindset with the quality mindset. That's 100% there. So I'm skipping that because that's not my bag. Like, I just tell you, you need to have it. And I let people like you and your friends talk about how they could be better at it. But my place is in that second hemisphere of the brain where it's like, so here's the, and be constantly hammering yourself with humans.
Yeah.
Always expect more fingers than thumbs. Separate the wheat from the chaff and never stop the hammering of humans. Because people have told me this over and over again. They're like, well, I get far better subscribers from people that download my free book than I do from giveaways. Duh. Those are the best people. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yet that's a small number of people.
Yeah.
You need to open up that funnel so you can get more humans in that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, the quality is going to be different all over the place. Go in expecting this, more fingers than thumbs, and allow that stuff. So it's like, if you only give yourself, if you're one of those authors that only allows themselves subscribers from the books that you've either sold or given away free, I get it, but you're probably cutting your earning potential down by 90%. Truly, even if you're successful.
Yeah.
Because, and for example, like I have clients that do this stuff where I'm like, what are we doing today for lead gen? And it's just constantly pushing people in there. There's always some level of always on, so that as those people flow through that stage one and you use your machines to get rid of everybody that doesn't need to be there, that, every month they're getting more and more people, and this thing just keeps building and building and building. And that way, when stage 3 happens, which is, hey, I've got a thing to sell you, yay, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. And then the other piece, so hopefully that answered the question of like, what can they do? It's like, go make friends, everybody promote everybody, do list building kinds of things. There's lots of free stuff out there. Here is the next piece.
Okay.
And this is for people that have more time and maybe a little bit more of an awareness of the market.
Yeah.
It's what I do. Build ecosystems within that space. Like, so for example, when I built that paranormal romance fan site, I did that specifically because I wanted to get into that space. And I'm like, well, I don't have any books yet, but I do know that there's people out here that buy a lot of other people's books. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Lo and behold, 11 years later or something like that, I sold it, and it was the biggest paranormal fan site on planet Earth. It reached 22 million people a month.
Wow.
Sometimes more, sometimes less. But it was like, yeah, it really got big. And it's important to kind of think like that.
Yeah.
And guess what? That thing made well over $1 million. And now I did sell my own books, but I'm not including that in there.
Yeah.
I'm just including the stuff that ecosystem made. So it's like one of those things where you can build an ecosystem that will attract all those readers to you, and you can learn more about them from a non-threatening, broad perspective. Think about this. You're not an author. You're not competing with anybody. There's no competitions. You're like, hey, we all love this stuff. Come on in. Let's talk about it. Let me take notes while you talk about it, because that way I know what to give you when it's time to sell something. So I launched a subscription box with that. I told you about that one.
Yep.
It sold out in less than 2 weeks.
Incredible.
And that was $55 a thing. Like, it literally, it took me 2 weeks. And I'm not talking about like setting the whole thing up and going through all those. Oh my gosh, I'm not sure if I like that color or this color.
Yeah.
Like, that took a little longer.
Yeah.
But when I went to sell it, I built a stinking near immediate 6-figure a year business.
Wow.
All through email, using that thing. And then I sell ad space in the newsletter. Now it's
then you got other revenue
starting
coming
to rank
in.
It's ranking in the search engines. It's growing its own list because of that. I'm able to sell affiliate products. So I have a reader list of tens of thousands, and I have an author list of another tens of thousands. And those folks are going to buy, like, the authors are going to buy tons of services, and the readers are going to buy tons of stuff. Like, we sold vampire fangs during Halloween back in the day.
Yeah.
People loved it. Like, we made so much money off of t-shirts. It was crazy.
Nice.
And so, like, I think we did $146,000 in sales in t-shirts passively with this kind of thing. And that was just a genre ecosystem. And the best part is, it's like, you can help so many authors by doing this. And it didn't cost a ton of money to build it. I just, reinvested back into it over the years, and then eventually didn't pay attention to it and came back. I'm like, oh, wow, you're making lots of money. Let's pat you on the head and do more fun things with you.
Big shout out and thank you to Jonny for taking some time out his day to spend some time with us. Of course, folks, you can go ahead and take a look at Jonny's services over at authorplatformrocket.com. No, that's not an affiliate link. I just really love what Jonny does and what he says. And if you enjoyed it too, make sure that you share this with somebody else who would enjoy it as well. Till later, I will see you in next week's interview.